Duracs, Bustles, Malloys, all famous names in our state's pioneering history. But in most of those famous families, there was one person making their mark while the rest kind of rode along on the coattails. There is one famous family, however, where they had not one, not two, but three outstanding West Australians. Imagine the sibling rivalry in the Forrest clan. Richard Offen, Executive Director of Heritage Perth, knows where all the skeletons are buried. And today we're digging up the history of the Forrest family, starting with this impressive statue in Kings Park.
This is John Forrest, the eldest of 10 children of William and Margaret Forrest. He certainly was substantial. He was over 6 feet tall and 18 stone, so pretty imposing. And he has a pretty imposing record too. He was an explorer, he was a politician, and he was a surveyor.
And he was really responsible for opening up a lot of Western Australia, wasn't he?
He certainly was. He was a great explorer. He led an expedition up the Murchison River to find its head, and then went on to debunk the myth that there was a huge inland sea in the middle of Western Australia.
They've got Lord Forrest up on this statue, but there was a bit of discussion, wasn't there, as to whether he was or he wasn't?
He was made a lord, but he never actually got to Buckingham Palace to be invested with the honour. He sadly died on a ship going to England, and so technically perhaps he's not a lord, but I really think he deserves the honour for all that he did for Western Australia. Shall we go and have a look at some of the history of some of the others?
We should. Coming up, more Destination WA. But first up, let's find out what's happening on 9 News. Richard, how does the cloisters fit into your Forrest family dig?
Well, you've got to remember the boys were brought up just outside Bunbury at Picton, and these 3 eldest sons were sent up here for schooling. This was the Perth Collegiate School originally. If we walk down to Stirling Gardens, we can have a look at one of the oldest public statues in Perth.
Okay, let us walk. Richard, that statue of John up at Kings Park is remarkably larger than this one of Alexander.
Yes, it is, but this was one of the first public statues in the city, and it shows what a high regard they had for Alexander. He was mayor for almost 10 years here in the city, and he was mayor at a time when the city was finding its first wealth as a result of the first gold boom. And he used that wealth to improve the city, improve the infrastructure, drainage, pavements, roads, and make it a better place for people to live.
Imagine being the third brother. It'd be a hard act to follow, but David has certainly left a legacy as well. So Richard, David, no statue.
Well, no. The third son, he decided to be a pastoralist. He worked on stations out in the country. He eventually retired to Claremont, made a significant contribution, but probably his major contribution was his great-grandson, who is, of course, Twiggy, the mining magnate.
Richard, it's really hard to imagine WA without the Forrest boys, isn't it? They were great explorers, politicians, pastoralists.
And of course, where we're standing now, Kings Park, as we see it today, is primarily Sir John Forrest's legacy. It was he who was the first chairman of the park authority, and he ensured that the park of this size exists for us to enjoy.
Well, we do owe them a fair deal.
We certainly do.